Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unsaid Hours. I know many of you listen to these stories to relax and slowly fall asleep. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight. If you enjoy these stories, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's begin. Let me tell you something that the people in charge do not want you to think about too carefully. The people we send into the dark on our behalf. The police officers, the detectives, the dispatchers who answer calls at 3 a.m. They see things. Not the things that make the news. Not the crimes and the accidents and the emergencies that get reported and documented and explained. The other things. The things that happen at the edges of those calls, in the moments before and after the official record begins. The things that get left out of the report, not because they did not happen, but because there is no box on the form for them, no procedure, no protocol, no language in the entire official vocabulary of law enforcement for what these officers actually encountered. They are trained for everything, except this. Think about what it means to be a police officer on night patrol. You are alone in a car on streets that are empty of everyone, except the people who have no good reason to be out at that hour. You respond to calls that take you to places most people will never go. The back roads, the abandoned buildings, the addresses that do not appear correctly on any map, the locations that other officers avoid without being able to say exactly why they avoid them. You go anyway, because that is the job. And sometimes, in those places, at those hours, with nothing but your radio and your training and the flashlight in your hand, you encounter something that your training did not prepare you for, something that your radio cannot help you with, something that your flashlight illuminates and your mind cannot process because it does not fit inside any category your entire career has given you. And then you get back in your car and you drive away and you do not file a report. Because tonight, 10 police officers are going to tell you what they actually saw, what actually happened. The calls that went into the official record as resolved with no further action, and that have never been out of these officers' heads since the night they responded to them. 10 accounts from the people we trust to go into the dark so that we do not have to. What they found there is not in any report. It is here. Turn off your lights. The dispatch tone is about to sound. These calls are coming in now. Story 1. The house on Miller Road. Officer James Kowalski has been with the same police department in rural Pennsylvania for 22 years. He is the kind of officer that small departments run on. Experienced, reliable. The person the newer officers come to when something does not make sense, when they need someone who has seen enough to put a situation in context. He has seen enough. He will tell you that directly. 22 years of night shifts in a rural county means he has responded to calls that range from routine to genuinely traumatic, that he has been in situations that required every bit of training he had, and some things that training does not cover. He is not easily rattled. He is not the kind of person who tells this kind of story. He is telling it now because he is 54 years old, and he has 3 years left before retirement, and he has that carrying this alone for 22 years is long enough. The call came in on a November night in his second year on the force. A neighbor had reported lights in a house on Miller Road that had been vacant for 11 years, not unusual on its own. Vacant properties attracted trespassers regularly, kids looking for a place to hang out, homeless individuals seeking shelter. He had responded to similar calls many times. He drove out to Miller Road. The house was a 2-story farmhouse set back from the road on a long gravel driveway. The property had belonged to a family that had moved away after a death. the details of which he did not know at the time and will not share now out of respect for the family. What he knew was that it had been empty for 11 years, that the estate was in some kind of legal limbo that had prevented its sale, and that the county had it on a list of properties to check periodically. He pulled into the driveway with his lights off, the standard approach for a trespasser call. He parked and sat for a moment and looked at the house. The lights were on. Not one light, not a flashlight moving through rooms the way a trespasser's light moves. The overhead lights. Multiple rooms. The house was lit up. The way a house is lit up when people are living in it, when someone is home, when the evening is ordinary and the lights are on, because that is what you do in the evening when you are inside a house. He called it in. Confirmed the address, confirmed the property was supposed to be vacant, requested a backup unit as a precaution. The dispatcher confirmed backup was 15 minutes out and told him to hold position. He held position for about 4 minutes. Then a shadow moved across one of the upstairs windows. Not the slow drift of a curtain or a reflection from his car. A deliberate movement, the shadow of something moving purposefully across the lit room on the other side of the glass. He watched it. It crossed the window and was gone. He got out of the car. He approached the house the way he was trained to approach an occupied structure, carefully, staying out of the direct line of the windows. Moving to the front door, he knocked. He identified himself. He waited. Nothing. He tried the door. It was unlocked. He pushed it open and stood in the doorway with his flashlight out. The house was dark. Not dark as in the lights had been turned off when he knocked. Dark as in there were no lights, had been no lights. The electricity to this property had been disconnected years ago, and there was no power. He swept his flashlight around the interior. Old furniture covered in dust cloths, a thick layer of dust on every surface. The smell of a house that had been closed up for a very long time. He checked every room, dust undisturbed everywhere. No footprints, no evidence of entry, no broken windows, no forced locks. The back door was also locked from the inside with a bolt that required a key to open from the outside. His backup arrived. They went through the house together, found nothing. He stood on the porch afterward and looked at the house, and the house looked back at him the way dark houses look back, blankly and without answer. He wrote in his report, responded to report of lights, investigated, found no evidence of trespass or occupancy, property secure. He has driven past the house on Miller Road many times in 22 years. He drives past it deliberately sometimes, out of his way, not for any reason he can explain. He looks at the windows when he passes. He has never seen the lights again. He does not know whether this is a relief. He knows that what he saw was real. He was in his second year, alert, sober, well-rested, doing his job. He saw a lit house and a shadow moving across an upstairs window, and he went in and found a house that had no power and had not been entered. He has 3 years left before retirement. He is going to spend them not knowing. He has made his peace with this. He is not sure peace is the right word. It is the word he has. Story 2, the 911 call. This story belongs to a dispatcher named Maria, who worked emergency services for 16 years before taking a supervisory position that moved her off the phones. She is not a police officer, but she is the person on the other end of the radio that police officers talk to on the night calls. And she has heard things on those calls that have never left her. She wants to be clear about her background before she tells this story. 16 years of dispatch work, thousands of calls. She has heard everything that people call 911 for, the full range of human emergency and desperation and fear. And she has the specific composure that this work either builds in a person or destroys them. and it built it in her. She does not startle. She does not panic. She processes information, and she responds, and she sends help, and she manages the space between the call and the response with whatever the call requires. She has had 2 calls in 16 years that she has not been able to manage in the ordinary way. The second one she will not discuss. The first one she will. It came in on a weeknight in late winter at 2:40 in the morning. She answered it the way she answered every call. Professionally, immediately, the standard opening. The voice on the other end was a woman's voice. Older, she thought, from the quality of it. Not elderly, but not young. The voice was calm. Not the calm of someone who is not in distress. The call-specific calm of someone who has accepted something and is reporting it rather than asking for help. A specific and unusual calm. The woman gave an address. Residential's. An address in a neighborhood Maria knew from other calls over the years. She gave it clearly and correctly. The full address, including zip code, the way people give addresses when they want to be sure they are understood. Then, she said that she needed someone to come. She said that she would not be there when they arrived, but that someone needed to come and see what was in the back room and make sure it was taken care of properly. Maria asked her to stay on the line. She asked for her name. The woman gave a name. Maria asked what was in the back room. The woman said it was her husband. She said he had been there for a while, and she was sorry it had taken her this long to report it, and she wanted someone to come and take care of him properly. Maria kept her on the line and sent a unit. The call lasted 4 more minutes, during which the woman spoke calmly and clearly about ordinary things. She asked if it was cold outside. She commented on the time of year. She said something about a neighbor's dog. She was not distressed. She was not confused. She was completely present and coherent, and the call had the quality of a conversation between 2 people who had time, which was the strangest quality of all given the circumstances. The unit arrived at the address. Maria heard the officers on the radio. They found the husband in the back room as described. He had been there for a significant period of time. The cause of death appeared to be natural causes. He was, based on what the officers found, an elderly man who had died in the back bedroom of the house some weeks prior. There was no sign of the woman. Maria's call was still connected. She asked the woman if she could hear the officers in the house. The woman said yes, she could hear them. She was glad they were there. She said to tell them thank you. Maria asked her where she was. There was a pause. The woman said she was where she needed to be. She said not to worry. She said her husband would be taken care of now, and that was all she had needed. The call disconnected. The officers searched the property. No woman. The neighbors on both sides knew the couple. The husband and wife had lived there for decades. The wife's name matched the name the woman had given Maria on the call. The wife had died 8 months earlier. Maria has the call recording. She has listened to it many times. The voice is clear and real. The information was accurate and actionable and led directly to the husband being found and properly attended to. She does not have an explanation. She filed the call exactly as she always filed calls, accurately and completely, with all the information she had received. She did not note anything unusual in the filing. She noted it here instead. 16 years, 2 calls. This was the first one. Story 3, The Detective and the Witness. Detective Sarah Okonkwo has been with her city's homicide division for 9 years, which means she has spent 9 years in the specific company of the worst things that people do to each other and the evidence they leave behind. She is a careful and thorough investigator. Her clearance rate is among the highest in her division. She works every case with the same methodical attention, following evidence where it leads without prejudging the destination. She followed the evidence in the Hartley case to a destination she has spent 3 years trying to account for. The Hartley case was a homicide investigation, the details of which she will not share beyond what is necessary for the account. What is necessary is this: there was a witness, a neighbor who had seen something relevant to the timeline of the case, something that would have been significant to the investigation. Standard investigative procedure required her to interview the witness. She went to the address. She knocked. A woman answered the door. Sarah describes her as middle-aged, neatly dressed, completely composed. She invited Sarah in. She offered coffee, which Sarah declined. She sat across from Sarah in the living room, and she answered every question Sarah asked, clearly and specifically, and with the kind of detail that experienced investigators recognize as genuine. The authentic, specific detail of someone describing something they actually observed, rather than the smoother, more general account of someone constructing a story. The witness had seen a vehicle. She gave a description that was specific enough to be useful. She had noted the time because she had been up with a sleepless grandchild and had checked the clock. She had seen the direction the vehicle had gone. Sarah thanked her. She asked for her contact information in case there were follow-up questions. The woman gave it without hesitation. Sarah went back to the department and ran the contact information. The address existed. The phone number existed. The woman did not. The address was listed to a family who had lived there for many years. The woman Sarah described did not match any current resident. The phone number had been disconnected 14 months prior. Sarah went back to the address. A man answered. He was the homeowner, had lived there for 20 years. Sarah described the woman she had spoken to. The man's expression changed. He said that the description matched his mother. He said his mother had lived with them for the last years of her life and had died 14 months ago in the living room, in the chair where Sarah said she had been sitting. From a stroke, he asked Sarah why she was asking. Sarah said she had made an error in her notes and was verifying an address. She drove back to the department. She sat in her car in the parking structure for 20 minutes. The information the witness had provided was accurate. The vehicle description led to a significant development in the case. The case was eventually closed. Sarah has never entered the account of that interview into the official case file. She has a separate record in her own notes that she keeps in a locked drawer. She has been a homicide detective for 9 years. She has conducted thousands of interviews. She knows the difference between a real person and something else. She is not sure anymore that the difference is as clear as she once believed. She does her job. She closes cases. She keeps the separate record locked. Story 4. The patrol on Route 7. Officer Danny Reyes has been on night patrol in a rural county in Texas for 14 years. Long stretches of empty highway, the kind of patrolling that is more about presence than about response, about being the visible evidence that law enforcement exists in these long, flat miles between towns. He knows Route 7 the way you know a road you have driven thousands of times. Every curve and every straightaway and every place where the shoulder is wide enough to pull over and every place where it narrows to nothing. He knows where the deer cross and where the coyotes come out and where the occasional drunk driver goes when they lose the road. He knows Route 7. He does not know what he saw on Route 7 on a Tuesday in August. He was running a standard patrol, the middle section of his shift, the hours when the road was at its emptiest and the job was at its most solitary. He had his window down because the summer night was hot and the air conditioning in the unit was imperfect. and the outside air, even at 90 degrees, was better than the recycled interior. He saw the car first. Stopped on the shoulder, about a quarter mile ahead, its hazard lights going. He approached the way he always approached stopped vehicles, slowly, watching for movement, keeping himself positioned correctly. He pulled in behind the car and ran the plate before getting out. The plate came back clean. A sedan registered to a woman, no outstanding issues. He approached the driver's side. The window was down. A woman was in the driver's seat. He asked if she needed assistance. She said she was fine. She had just pulled over because she was tired and had not wanted to drive while she was drowsy. She said she was almost home and would be on her way shortly. She was calm and coherent and showed no signs of impairment. She thanked him for stopping. He went back to his unit and waited, the standard wait to make sure the stopped vehicle actually left the shoulder. The car did not move. He waited 5 minutes. The hazard lights continued blinking. He got out again and approached. The car was empty. He stood at the driver's side window, and the car was empty. The seat was empty. The car was locked from the inside, all 4 doors, which required the key fob or the manual interior lock. The keys were in the ignition. The interior showed no sign that it had been exited in any way. He searched the shoulder and the ditch on both sides and the field beyond the ditch. Nothing. No woman. No footprints in the soft earth of the shoulder that would indicate she had gotten out and walked. The only footprints in the shoulder were his own from his first approach. He called it in, requested additional units. They searched the area. Nothing. He had the car towed. He contacted the registered owner. She was reached at her home, 30 miles away, where she had been all evening. She had not been driving her car that night. Her car, she said, was in her driveway, which was confirmed by a unit sent to her address. 2 cars with the same plate. One of them containing a woman who was not there. He has filed this in the part of his experience that does not go into official reports. He drives Route 7 regularly. He passes the shoulder where the car was stopped on every patrol. He still does not know what he saw. He knows it was real. He knows it was not the registered owner. He knows that whatever he spoke to on the shoulder of Route 7 on a Tuesday in August answered his questions coherently and thanked him for stopping and was gone before he got back to his unit. He drives Route 7. He watches the shoulders. He keeps his window up now, even in the summer, even when the air conditioning is imperfect. Story 5, the evidence room. This story comes from a property and evidence officer named Frank, who worked in the evidence room of a large urban police department for 19 years. The evidence room is not a glamorous assignment. It is careful, methodical work. Receiving evidence, cataloging it, storing it correctly, maintaining the chain of custody that makes evidence legally usable, releasing it when cases are closed. Frank is precise. He has to be. The chain of custody is not a suggestion. It is the thing that makes the entire legal process work, the documented and unbroken record of who had what and when. In 19 years, Frank has maintained that chain without a single significant break. He is proud of this. He cannot explain what happened to the evidence from the Carver case. The Carver case was a homicide investigation from 9 years into his tenure. He will not share the case details. What he will share is that a specific item of evidence from that case, a personal item belonging to the victim, photographed and cataloged and tagged and placed in a sealed evidence bag and stored in the correct location in the evidence room, was not in its location when he went to retrieve it for a court proceeding. He searched. He checked the log. He checked adjacent storage. He reviewed the access records for the evidence room, which showed every person who had entered and what they had accessed. No one had accessed the Carver evidence. No one had signed it out. No one had moved it. It was not there. He found it 3 days later. It was in a different section of the evidence room entirely, in a location that stored evidence from unrelated cases, in a box that contained items from a case that had been closed 6 years prior. It was not in its evidence bag. It was simply there, loose among unrelated items, as if it had been placed there by someone who knew where to put something to make it difficult to find, but not impossible. The access records showed no one had been in that section of the evidence room in the relevant time period. Frank has no explanation. He does not believe in explanations that involve the evidence moving itself. He does not believe in explanations that involve a person moving it without accessing the room. He has those two facts, and he cannot reconcile them, and he has spent 9 years not reconciling them. He tells this story now because he is retired, and because the case is long closed, and because carrying an irreconcilable thing alone for 9 years is its own kind of weight. And he wanted to set it down somewhere. He set it down here. Story 6, The Night Patrol Partner. Officer Rebecca and her partner Carl worked the same patrol car for 6 years in a mid-sized city in Ohio. 6 years is long enough to know someone the way patrol partners know each other. Deeply and practically, the knowledge of someone you spend 10 hours a night with in a small car, whose habits and reactions and instincts you have observed in every kind of situation the job produces. She knew Carl. She knows what she saw on the night of October 3rd in their 4th year of partnership. They were responding to a domestic disturbance call, the kind of call that patrol officers respond to regularly. The call type that is statistically the most dangerous because the variables are so unpredictable. They approached the address correctly, parked, approached the door. Carl was as ahead of her, the standard approach with 2 officers, the lead officer closer to the door. He stopped. Not stopped the way you stop when you are assessing a situation, the purposeful, considered stop. Stopped the way you stop when something has happened to your body that you did not choose. He stopped mid-step, 1 foot still in the air, completely frozen, and Rebecca almost walked into him. She asked him what was wrong. He did not answer. She looked at his face. She does not describe his expression in detail. She says only that she has been a police officer for 17 years, and she has seen fear on faces in many forms. The fear of confrontation, and the fear of injury, and the fear of death, and that she has learned to read these forms quickly and accurately because her safety depends on reading them. What was on Carl's face was none of those forms. It was something she had not seen before, a specific stillness, not the stillness of someone who is controlling their fear. The stillness of someone who has encountered something so far outside their categories that their entire processing system has simply stopped while it attempts to find a category. She looked in the direction he was looking. The front of the house, the door, nothing extraordinary. She put her hand on his arm. He came back. She does not know how else to describe it. He came back. Something returned to his face that had been absent. He exhaled. He looked at her. He said they should approach. They responded to the call. It was routine. Nobody was hurt. They cleared the scene and got back in the car. She asked him what had happened. He said nothing had happened. He said he had thought he saw something, but it was nothing. She drove the rest of the shift. She has never pushed him on it. In 6 years of partnership and the years of friendship that followed when they were assigned different cars, she has never asked him again what he saw at the front of that house. Because she knows Carl, and she knows the difference between nothing and something. And she knows that if Carl is not telling her what he saw, it is because what he saw is not something that words improve. She respects this. She keeps her own account. She tells it here because Carl never will. Story 7, The Cold Case. Detective Marcus Williams retired after 31 years in law enforcement, the last 12 of which were spent in the cold case unit of a large city police department. Cold cases are old cases, unsolved crimes from years or decades past that are periodically reviewed in light of new evidence or new investigative techniques. The work is deliberate and patient and requires a specific tolerance for sitting with things that may never be resolved. Marcus has that tolerance. It is one of the things 31 years gave him. He does not have tolerance for the Ellison case. The Ellison case he carries differently from the others, in a different place, with a different weight. He will not share case details. He will tell you the one specific thing that happened during his work on it that he cannot account for. He was reviewing physical evidence from the original investigation, evidence that had been stored for over 2 decades, going through it with the thoroughness that cold casework requires. Among the evidence was a collection of personal items from the victim's home, items that had been photographed and cataloged at the time and stored. One of the items was a small framed photograph. He took it out of the evidence bag and looked at it. A family photograph, the kind that sits on a mantelpiece, a woman and a man and 2 children in what appeared to be a living room setting. He looked at it the way investigators look at evidence, carefully and completely. Then he looked at the background. In the background of the photograph, barely visible, in the doorway that opened from the living room into what appeared to be a hallway, there was a figure, not a family member standing in the doorway. Something else, a shape that was in the doorway, and that was, when he looked at it carefully, not consistent with the quality of light and shadow in the rest of the photograph, that had a different quality, a presence within the image that felt. And he uses this word carefully. Wrong. He had the photograph analyzed, digitally enhanced, examined by a forensic image specialist. The specialist confirmed that the image had not been altered and that the figure in the doorway was present in the original photograph and was not a photographic artifact. The figure in the doorway could not be identified. No family member and no known associate of the family matched the description. The case remains cold. Marcus is retired. He is 63 years old. He gardens. He reads. He has grandchildren. He thinks about the doorway sometimes. He thinks about what is in it. He does not have an answer. In 31 years, he closed many cases. He carries the ones he did not close differently from the ones he did. He carries the Ellison case most carefully of all. Story 8. The Abandoned Station. Officer Tanya Cruz and her training officer responded to a call at an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of their jurisdiction. Lights reported by a passing motorist. Standard response, the kind that gets logged as a check on an unoccupied structure. Tanya had been on the force for 8 months. She was still in her training period, still learning the job from the senior officer riding with her, still accumulating the experiences that form a police officer's understanding of what the work actually is, as opposed to what the training described it as. This was not an experience the training had described. The gas station had been closed for years. The pumps were still standing, but the canopy above them had partially collapsed, and the building itself was dark and appeared structurally compromised. The passing motorist had reported lights in the building. They approached in the standard way. No lights visible when they arrived. They parked and used flashlights to examine the exterior before entering. On the exterior wall of the building, clearly visible in their flashlight beams, someone had written something, not graffiti, not the spray-painted territorial markings of the kind that appeared on abandoned buildings. Handwriting, block letters, carefully formed, written at eye level, in what appeared to be chalk or a similar material. The message was an address, a specific street address with a house number and a street name, in the town that formed the center of their jurisdiction. Tanya's training officer wrote it down. They checked the building, found nothing, called it in, left. The next day, Tanya's training officer ran the address. There was an active missing persons case associated with that address. A person who had been reported missing 2 weeks prior and had not been located. The investigation had stalled. They reported the address to the lead detective on the case. The detective investigated. The missing person was found alive at a location connected to that address in circumstances she will not describe out of respect for the individual involved. The writing on the gas station wall was examined before the building was demolished as part of a separate process. No one could explain how it had come to be there. No connection was ever established between the gas station and anyone involved in the case. The writing gave the right address at the right time. Tanya is now a 12-year veteran of the same department. She has her training officer to thank for writing the address down rather than dismissing it. She thanks him regularly. She still does not know who wrote on the wall. She has stopped needing to know. Some things are just true. Story 9, The Dispatcher at 4 in the morning. This is a short account from a dispatcher named George who has worked emergency services in a rural county for 23 years. He is not a person who tells stories. He says this himself at the start. He is a person who answers calls and sends help and documents what he hears and does his job. He has done it for 23 years. He is good at it. On a night in March 11 years ago, at 4 in the morning, the dispatch board lit up with an incoming call. He answered it. There was no voice. There was, instead, a sound that he has spent 11 years trying to describe, and that he will describe one more time, now and then will not describe again. It was not static. It was not feedback. It was not any technical malfunction he has encountered in 23 years of working this equipment. It was a sound that had a quality of distance to it, a great distance, as if whatever was producing it was very far away, and the distance was not physical distance, but a different kind, a distance that he does not have a word for. The sound lasted for about 40 seconds. Then the call disconnected. He sat for a moment. He logged it as a silent call, standard procedure when a call contains no actionable information. He noted the incoming number. The incoming number, when he ran it, was his own dispatch center's outgoing line. The call had come from inside the building. He was alone in the building. He checked every room. He was alone. He logged it and finished his shift and went home and made breakfast and did not sleep, and has not thought about it every day since, but has thought about it on enough days that the total over 11 years is significant. He will not describe the sound again. He described it here because the weight of it needed somewhere to go that was not only inside him. It has gone here now. He is glad to be a little lighter. Story 10, The Last Call of the Shift. This is the last story, and it belongs to a retired officer named William, who served for 34 years in various departments across the American South before retiring to a small house near the coast where he grows tomatoes and watches the water, and has, he says, earned the right to be done with the dark. He is done with the dark. He is telling this one story because his granddaughter asked him to, because she is 17 and curious about what the job was actually like, and because he decided that, among all the things he will not tell her about 34 years of law enforcement, there is one thing that she should know, that she has a right to know, that he wants to leave with someone younger than himself before he is done. His last call before retirement was not his last scheduled call. His last scheduled call had been a routine welfare check that resolved without incident, and he had cleared it and driven back toward the station, and had been 20 minutes from the end of his last shift when the call came in. Single car accident on a highway he knew well. He was the closest unit. He responded. The car had gone off the road on a curve, down a shallow embankment, and come to rest in a flat area beside a stand of trees. Not a severe accident by the look of it. The car was damaged but intact. The driver's airbag had deployed. He approached, checked the interior, found the driver, a young man, conscious, shaken, but apparently uninjured, the kind of outcome that the job occasionally delivers as a counterweight to its other outcomes. He got the young man out of the car and up to the road and sat him on the hood of his unit while he waited for the paramedics. The young man was quiet, the specific quiet of shock, looking at his hands. William asked him what had happened. The young man said he had swerved. William asked him what he had swerved for. The young man looked at him for a moment and then looked back at his hands. He said there had been a woman standing in the road, right in the middle of the curve, standing completely still, facing his car. He said he had swerved to avoid her. William looked at the road, at the curve, at the marks where the car had left the asphalt. He asked the young man to describe the woman. The young man described her. William wrote it down in his notebook, on the last page of the last notebook of his 34-year career. He wrote it down carefully and completely. Then he closed the notebook. He has not opened it since. He grows tomatoes. He watches the water. He is done with the dark. But he left the description with his granddaughter before she drove home that night, written on a piece of paper, folded once. He told her to keep it somewhere safe. He told her that if she ever saw a woman matching that description standing in the road on a curve, she should not swerve. He told her to drive straight through. He told her that the ones who stand in the road are not the ones to be afraid of. He told her what to be afraid of is what makes them stand there. He did not tell her what that was. She did not ask. Some things pass between people without being spoken. She drives carefully. She keeps the paper somewhere safe. 10 officers, 10 calls, 10 nights that never made it fully into any official report. The people we send into the dark on our behalf go places that most of us will never go, at hours when most of us are exactly where you are right now. In the dark that is safe and still and ordinary. In the dark of a house and a bed and a night that contains nothing unusual. They go so that you do not have to. What they find there is their own to carry. Some of them have set a little of it down. Here, sleep now. The dispatch board tonight. No calls coming in. No one being sent anywhere. Just the night, doing what the night does. Close your eyes. Sleep well. There is something Officer Kowalski wants to add about the house on Miller Road that he left out of the initial telling because he was not sure it was sided, that it is. Because relevance in situations like this is not always obvious, and sometimes the thing that seems like a footnote is the thing that actually matters. He says that when he walked through the house that night, the dark, dust-covered, clearly unoccupied house, he noticed something in the upstairs room, the room where he had seen the shadow cross the window, a smell. Not the smell of a house that has been closed up for 11 years, which is a specific and unmistakable smell, dry and stale and slightly sweet in the way of things that have sat too long. This was different. This was the smell of something recent, something that had been there within hours. Coffee. He stood in the empty, unpowered, 11 years vacant room, and there was the unmistakable smell of freshly brewed coffee. He did not put this in his report. He is not sure what he would have written. The room smelled of coffee. In a house with no power. In a house where no one had lived for 11 years. He has no framework for this, and he is a man who needs a framework before he puts something in a report. He has thought about the smell many times over 22 years. He has thought about what it means that a house can be dark and cold and decades empty and still smell in one specific room of something warm and recent and domestic. He thinks it means the house was not as empty as it appeared. He thinks it means that whatever turns the lights on in that house does so in the full context of occupying the space, not just the lights but all of it. The coffee and the movement and the shadow on the window and the whole texture of a life being lived. He finds this more unsettling than the lights alone. He is not sure why. He drives past sometimes. He does not stop. Maria, the dispatcher, has one more thing to say about the call from the woman who had been dead for 8 months. She says that in the 4 minutes of conversation after the woman had given the address and explained why she was calling, in the time when they talked about ordinary things, the cold outside and the time of year and the neighbor's dog, the woman said something that Maria almost did not register at the time because it was said so casually, and because she was acknowledging the call and sending the unit and doing 6 things at once the way dispatchers do. The woman said that she was glad Maria had answered. She said it the way you say something to a specific person, not a general gladness about the service, but a directed gladness about this particular person on the other end of this particular call. She said she had been trying to reach someone for a while, and she was glad it was Maria. Maria did not know what to do with this in the moment and set it aside and kept managing the call. She has thought about it for years, about what it means that the woman had been trying to reach someone for a while, about how long a while was, about whether there had been other calls that had not connected, or had connected to someone else who had not understood or had not been ready to receive what was being said. She thinks about the 45 minutes of busy overnight dispatch that preceded that call. The other calls she had taken, whether any of them had been something she had not recognized for what it was. She has gone back and reviewed the logs from that night. She found 2 calls from an unregistered number at earlier hours. Both were logged as silent calls with no voice, no actionable information, disconnected after a few seconds. She has listened to the recordings. They are silent in the way that a call is silent when someone is on the line but not speaking, when there is the presence of an open connection but no voice. She thinks those were the earlier attempts. She thinks the third one was the one that worked. She is glad she answered. She is glad she was there. She thinks about the husband in the back room, taken care of properly now, and the wife who made sure of it. And she thinks that 16 years of taking calls that ranged from the trivial to the devastating had prepared her, without her knowing it was preparing her, for the one call that mattered in a way she could not have anticipated. She answered. She sent help. She did her job. She is glad it was her. Detective Sarah Okonkwo has a final note about the witness who gave her the vehicle description in the Hartley case. She says that 3 months after the case closed, she drove back to the address. She had not planned to. She found herself driving past it on the way to something else, and she stopped. The man who had answered the door came out. He had seen her car from the window and recognized it. He asked her if there was something else he could help her with. She said she had one question. She asked him if his mother had ever been involved in neighborhood watch activities or community safety efforts during her lifetime. He said yes, absolutely, for decades. She had been the one who noticed things, who called things in, who kept an eye on the street. He said she had believed strongly that neighbors had a responsibility to each other, that you did not look away from things you saw, that you said something. Sarah thanked him and got back in her car. She thought about the vehicle description. The specific, accurate, actionable vehicle description that had been given to her by a woman who had died 8 months prior. She thought about a lifetime of noticing things and calling them in. She thought about the habit of it, the deep-rooted habit of a person who had always believed you did not look away, you said something. She thought about that habit not stopping, just continuing, in whatever form was available to it. She thinks some habits are stronger than death. She thinks some people are so fundamentally who they are, that who they are continues past the ordinary boundaries of things. She has kept a witness interview in a locked drawer for 3 years. She takes it out sometimes. She looks at her notes from that conversation. She is a homicide detective. She deals in evidence. This is some of the best evidence she has ever gathered. She keeps it safe. Officer Danny Reyes on Route 7 has one last thing. He says that about 6 months after the night of the empty car on the shoulder, he ran the plate again, the registered owner's plate, just to check. The system showed no record of that plate having been run on the night of the incident from his unit. His run was logged. His approach was logged. His call-in was logged. The plate query was not in the system. He ran his own activity log for that night. Everything was there. The patrol route, the stops, every call. The plate query from the stop on Route 7 was not. He asked his sergeant about it, casually, framed as a question about the system's reliability. His sergeant said the system was reliable. He did not ask again. He has driven Route 7 on every shift since. Every single patrol that takes him through that stretch, he drives it alert with his window up and his eyes on the shoulders. He has not seen the car again. He has not seen the woman again. He has thought about her many times. He has thought about the conversation, how coherent and ordinary it was, how she had thanked him for stopping, the specific politeness of it. He has thought about what she was and where she came from and where she went, and what it means that she was sitting in a locked car on the shoulder of Route 7 on a Tuesday in August. He does not have answers. He has driven Route 7 thousands of times. He will drive it thousands more before he retires. He watches the shoulders. He keeps his window up. He is glad he stopped that night. He thinks stopping was the right thing to do. Some things deserve to have someone stop for them, even when, especially when, you cannot explain what they are.